You are listening to Bootstrap Farmer Radio.
Hey everybody, this is Nick and Brandon, and this is the week we kind of start reintroducing the Bootstrap Farmer Incubator and start adding things. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the kind of, to me, cornerstone of a lot of projects that we're working on, which is a commercial kitchen. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of speculation and worry about, what do we do and all that kind of thing. So we're just going to go through some points to maybe point you guys in the right direction about where to actually go get the information and then how to go about implementing it or at least looking into it. So Brandon has a commercial kitchen that he's running Craven Local Food Market out of right now, and he also has his food truck. And I also, as everybody knows, has a commercial kitchen and food truck as well. So between the two of us, we have 2 certified commercial kitchens in 2 separate states, and maybe that gives us enough credibility to actually talk about it. So the first thing, let's eliminate some fear. Let's eliminate the fear of how big this needs to be. And one of the considerations that I wanted to go over that I don't have, but Brandon does, is my commercial kitchen is very small. It's 12 foot by 14 foot, and it was designed to build added value products from our farm in an assembly line format where we start at one end, and by the time we get to the other, we have something packaged up and ready to send to our clients. Brandon also does that, but he also has tables that he has to consider. So the size of our kitchen is very different. So knowing the end goal that you have in mind, are you going to do farm events? Are you going to cater? Or are you going to make things and then take to the market? That's going to dictate the size of your kitchen. Brandon, kind of walk everybody visually through your kitchen and to the scale of it. You have things that I don't have, like walk-in coolers and a bigger dry storage area, and you have fryers you're really not using, but it came with it. So, and ovens and things like that. And these are all things that I did not have. So kind of, how's that working out week 2?
Yeah, I mean, I got pretty lucky in regards to finding a place that had all the equipment that I actually needed. Like you had mentioned, there's fryers in there. We haven't used them yet, and I don't think we'll be using them a whole bunch. But yeah, it was just pretty standard. A big refrigerator that on one side we have our vegetable meal delivery subscription ingredients, or when we use up the ingredients, that's where we keep it cold until we deliver everything. On the other side is the Craven Local Food Market stuff. And so, we're just starting out. It's still small. And so right now we have the refrigerator space just kind of divided in half. And once we bring in more money for the business and it can afford a new fridge, we'll be buying another one because by then, we'll be scaling up. Just coming around the corner, so it's the fridge, and then right behind that is the prep table. And that's important because you most often have to visit the refrigerator while you're working at the prep table. So the fact that you can just turn around and be there within a step works out quite nice. And just working down the wall, there's another prep table for when we're laying things out for the subscription, sort of plot, 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 like you had said, like the assembly line. And then on the other side of that is the fryers, the oven, the stove. And so everything's kind of confined, cooking and prep-wise, to that small area. And so rounding the corner towards the outside of the kitchen, but still in the kitchen, is where we do the packaging. So if we're wrapping up a sausage, wrapping up a salad, that's where we wrap everything up. And then we're sort of entering the closet storage space, and that's where we keep all of our packaging materials, all of the cleaning supplies off the ground by 6 inches, kept separate from food. So on the other side is where we keep all of our ingredients, like you'd imagine a pantry. And that's basically that closet. And then just leaving that is behind the counter. And so from behind the counter, you access the kitchen, and there's only one entrance in or out. From behind the counter, it's small, and so it keeps people from coming back there. And I'll just mention the counter quick, just because it completes the space, but there's a big countertop, and right behind that, so you can just turn around, you can get the coffee, you can get the drinks. And so everything's confined to, again, a small area. And when we're open for breakfast, we actually we're trying to work towards not even having to use the kitchen, because breakfast is sort of slow and I only want one person to have to work there. And so she's got to work within a very small U, so she doesn't have to go back into the kitchen, back into the fridge, leaving the counter and cash register alone. And so we're very close to that actually, and just kind of working out the kinks on. We're tripping some the breaker once in a while because we have a lot of hot holding equipment. So just small stuff like that. But yeah, that's basically layout of our commercial kitchen.
So one of the last things we're going to talk about is actually going to other kitchens and taking a look around and talking to some chefs and befriending them and saying, can I look at your kitchen? Just to get a sense of how it works. And the reason I wanted Brandon to talk about his is because there's a lot of infrastructure that he has to have that I don't. Things like lines to the soda machine, lines of water going to the ice maker. He mentioned his coffee. We don't have to deal with beverage service where we're at. And if you have a commercial kitchen on your farm, you're also not having to have places to do plate prep that's fixing to go out into service. So that reduces so much space. And because you're not taking plates out, you're not having to have like storage of plates and silverware and spoons and that other kind of thing. So it really reduces the footprint of not only the prep area, but the ancillary things that you need to run a kitchen, like storage and separate storage for the cleaning, like you said. The other thing that Brandon mentioned was refrigeration. And I don't think it's possible to have enough refrigeration. I mean, it seems like on the days that we're harvesting and moving stuff around, we're loading and unloading, reloading refrigerators. And it's just one of those things that you really have to take a look at. If you had to spend your money on anything, it's the refrigerators. Make sure you get the right size. Brandon and I both suggest buying new on refrigerators because of the warranty. That's really saved me on two separate occasions a lot of money where we had to have, and most people listening to this are also in rural type environments, and sometimes you can't get service in your town for these units. And if you have a warranty and they're able to send a service tech out to cover warranty that's having to drive, in like in my case, an hour and a half to 2 hours, well, I didn't have to pay for that. And just that peace of mind really got me a long, long way. So the next point that people tend to kind of get a little squirrely over of, they waste a lot of mental time worrying about the unknowns. So instead of just calling up the place to get the information, hey, what all do I need to get certified here? They put these mental barriers up. Well, I have to have this and that and the other. And sometimes you don't. My example of that, and because of the relationship that I have with the people, I did not view the certifiers as somebody that was against me or anything like that. These people are pro-business. They're just there to keep everybody safe. And so I said, listen, we're never going to fry anything or cook anything. We're a raw prep kitchen, so we don't have an oven. And that eliminated one of the things off the list, which was a Ventahood. So why have a Ventahood if you're not going to use it? So knowing the type of things that you're likely to put out from your kitchen over the next few years, you can ask and answer these questions and then say, hey, can we get a variance on here? And oftentimes you'll see that.
Yeah, I agree. And same thing with the fryers. You don't need a grease trap if you're not frying things. And, let's talk about your commercial kitchen a little bit, because mine, I have people coming in, sitting down. It requires more, but you said raw prep kitchen, and that's what I think a lot of people are thinking about doing. So, I mean, how simple is yours?
So there will be pictures of all this up, but if I had to verbally walk you around it, you walk in a center door on the 14-foot wall, so it's 12 foot deep, 14 foot wide. Immediately to the left is the hand washing sink, which is something I had to have. Then we had a 3-compartment sink for washing all the dishes, which is also something we had to have. Above that, because we're not doing an all-day service, because we're only doing a couple of days worth of prep and then going out, there is I believe it's a 10 or 20 gallon hot water heater, on-demand hot water heater that we actually have above the sink. So we're utilizing that top wall space. To the right of that is where we have our drying / storage racks for all of our equipment. And then we have the double wash sink for our produce. So the heart of all the salads was always the spring lettuce mix kind of thing. So we would put the lettuce in there. That's where we washed it, spun it, dried it, and everything like that. But on the day that we actually prepped, we would put that lettuce mick back in the stainless steel sink. And then we had all of our salad ingredients chopped up into the square Cambros. And a Cambro is like a brand name for those clear plastic square containers that you see in restaurants a lot. And so we would just have those stacked up along the wall on the table. And so the container would start at the sink. We would put our salad in there, and it just went down the line, a little bit from this Cambro, a little bit from that Cambro, the containers of dressing and nuts or cheeses at the end. Close it, turn it around. We had a knockdown table that we could set up in the middle. And so we just turned around, and that's where the label got put on the salad. And then once we had enough for a load, we would take it to the refrigerator that wasn't in the same room. The refrigerator was actually in our grow room at this point. Again, we just went down the line and got it done. Here recently, I did put in more storage for things like vinegars, oils, our dried herbs, salt, pepper, things like that we have in bottles. But that's it. It's just this square working area that all works in a line. Once the service is finished and everything's complete, we would either put it back in the refrigerator to use the next day for the farmer's market, or we would take the Cambros and put them in the sink, wash them, dry them, and then we're out of there. Another big advantage of having that small footprint is it doesn't take that much time to clean up because you're having to constantly work clean because you don't have the luxury of spreading out a mess. It kept everything, like I really like being confined during projects. Even I ask you for like, hey, on this video, what are my parameters here? And I like the restrictions because it forces you to be creative. So if you have a small space and everything has its own spot and that's where it needs to go, and you're able to work clean and have a process, that's saved us a ton of labor over the years.
Now, understanding that every state, county, and town is different, what were the first steps that you took? You didn't really have experience in any of this stuff. You figured it out as you go. What were some of the first things that you did to do your due diligence and to figuring out what you needed to do?
So when I had the idea, it was very quick when we started the farm that I knew a commercial kitchen was the way to go. So because I had worked at a restaurant before and I had a great relationship with the owner, I just called the owner of the restaurant and I said, hey, this is what I'm going to do. Where do I start? You don't know where to start. And he says, the only thing you need to do is call your county health department. I called the county health department. They came out and I verified that, do we need to do anything with the city? Nope. We're the people. Just to cover myself, I got with my lawyer and I said, this is what I'm going to do. This is what the county said. And he gave it his thumbs up. He didn't charge me anything because, he's not on retainer or anything. But if you have a question and you use the same lawyer over and over again, as you're setting up your business, you can call them up and ask a question. They're not going to send you a bill or anything like that. Now, I think that's another kind of stigma out there. Well, if I get a lawyer, it's going to cost me every time I pick up the phone. Well, just don't get a jerk lawyer kind of thing. I mean, don't get an ambulance chaser. They're all different. And they all have their specialties. I did call the state ag department and I said, how does this work? And basically what they said, and again, this is for Texas, please don't take what I'm telling you here. I'm just telling you my story and think that this is going to be what you need to do for your state. But basically I had to look at it as like, if you were going to take this to market, what would the end user experience be? And so I had to go through two versions of end user experience. One, from the farm to the kitchen, everything has to be harvested correctly, washed, dried correctly. And then it became an ingredient that any other restaurant would have had. And I had to follow holding temps, ways to go about sanitation to where we weren't going to hurt anybody, and then deliver that product still at the correct holding temp. So taking on the responsibility of truly from seed to somebody's office desk, I knew where all these ingredients, where they had gone through. So I knew if we ever had an issue, that it was my fault, not some other farmer or distribution person. I was the one solely to blame. So that, oddly enough, made me feel really good about it. All that to say this, you have to do your own due diligence. Talking about things on Facebook and in groups is one thing to get ideas of where to start, but you have to do your own due diligence. Make sure that whoever's coming to certify your kitchen, that you additionally follow up and say, is there anything else I need to do? And I'm going to put a lot of people's mind at ease right now. Get in your car, this afternoon or as you're listening to this and drive around your town and look at all the nasty restaurants that every little town has. If we said it in the last podcast, if somebody else can do it, you can do it too. So if that place that's just gross can get their commercial kitchen, you being who you are and doing things right, you're going to be okay.
And that sort of gets into food safety. And as farmers, we already know about the responsibilities that we all have to give our best foot forward when it comes to providing safe and clean food. And that just gets extended when you have a commercial kitchen. So I can pretty much guarantee you one of the first things they'll want you to do if you don't have it already is get your Serve Safe certification. And that's just basically what are the rules that you have to abide by when operating a commercial kitchen. So you mentioned it, proper holding temperatures.
And this is pretty universal. You're going to have this.
Yeah. Because to one person that's if you have 6 people in a commercial kitchen working, at least one person must have their Serve Safe certification, or your rating is going to be docked, or you might get some sort of fine. But yeah, it just basically teaches you, and this is a good thing, right? You want to know that anyone who operates a commercial kitchen knows the proper rules when it comes to how long can you leave chicken out, where to store the chicken in the refrigerator. You obviously don't want to put raw chicken on the top shelf and have it drip down onto your leafy greens. And so it's a lot of common sense stuff. We just had everyone at Craven Local Food Market pass this thing. They studied for a day. A lot of it's common sense and it's important. You know, to say it's not important, but don't let that intimidate you. It's one of the steps you have to do.
And even though it's common sense, don't worry if you don't know it. If you haven't worked in a commercial kitchen, there's just ways of going about working through a kitchen, because each kitchen has its own personality and pace and kind of tone. And you're going to come into your own in your kitchen. But just because you don't know something that isn't common sense, it's because you haven't been exposed to it. And that's what that Serve Safe will kind of help you with. And if you take that when you take that Serve Safe, because you need to, and you start designing out your kitchen, you'll already have that information in mind. And because you're already certified and because you know the rules, it really helps with the health inspections that come both for the initial certification and then the continuing. I get done twice a year per kitchen. So I get 4 inspections a year. I always say, while you're here, do you want to do the other one? And they're like, no, it's not because we start at different times and they come on the month you start it and 6 months after, at least mine does. So just know that you'll have some continual inspections coming up and down.
And, I'll just say, knowing what I know now, I think it's good that you take the Serve Safe certification test before you go too far, because that'll inform how you actually set up your kitchen. It'll inform what equipment that you might need depending on what you actually plan on doing in there. We're not just going to assume everyone wants to do salads. I mean, there's an endless variety. So do you want to talk about that a little bit and get into farm products and sort of how that impacts the layout, your menu planning, like how to gather all of that information for yourself so it'll inform your layout of your kitchen, and you'll also be able to properly inform the health department as to how your processes should be looking.
So this is where you really need to look inward and go, what am I capable of making? Okay, and what are my skills? What can I learn? What can I hire? And then maybe, like, I learned a lot of things from one of my hires. I mean, she taught me how to do a lot of things, and with that, introduced me to some of these tools that we're fixing to talk about. And when Brandon and I were talking about this particular outline for this episode, it's easy to kind of go off the deep end and talk about every piece of equipment I have. But like he said, not everybody's going to do a salad. Not everybody's just going to do salsas and hummuses and snack packs or whatever. Some of you guys are going to make sandwiches and wraps, and some of you guys are going to do meal prep, and you're going to need more specialized equipment. But I will talk about 3 things that made all the difference in the world for me and for what I was doing. The first one is, and this is the dumbest thing looking back, I still get a little jittery when I think about how dumb it was. I spent at least once a month, would have to stop what I was doing, drive to the store, spend 10 or 12, 15 bucks on a damn can opener for the chickpeas, right? So because in my mind at the time, I couldn't see the forest through the trees. The big number 10 can openers, which also work on the smaller cans, well, those things are like $100. I don't want to spend $100 a can opener because they're only 10. Well, after you go through 3 or 4, because I think they're all crappy nowadays, I spent way more than what I should have for a can opener. And then I caught one on sale brand new for like $89 at A Smart one time. So something as simple as a can opener not only speeds up your process, but eliminates you from having to drive to the store during service where you have to put everything back up and then get it all back out if you're a solo person. But it also keeps you from spending 10 or 12 bucks a month to get it over with. The second thing I think that made my kitchen the most valuable was having a Vitamix. And for those of you that haven't seen one or aware of it, a Vitamix is like a blender on steroids. We wear ours out. That's what we make our dressings with. That's what we make our pestos with, our hummus, some of our sauces, some of our salsas. It's just been indispensable. And I know that we would have tore up blenders in the same way we tore up hand cranks. And they're pretty standard. I mean, you can get them used. I wouldn't feel bad about buying a used Vitamix. I may lean toward a factory refurbished one, but they definitely hold their value, and they're just beasts and workhorses.
We have one in the food truck and Craven.
You can make smoothies with them. Yeah, I mean, it goes on and on, the versatility. What I like about mine, and like I wouldn't make a smoothie in the same one I made the pesto because you always have that. I kept one for sweet and one for spicy just because I'm weird, I guess. But it did come. The one I got came with 2 separate containers to mix things up in. And the third thing that made a big difference for us and that sped up my process was buying a KitchenAid mixer. We did a lot of stuffed bell peppers, so I was mixing things like cream cheese and a lot of vegetables and things like that. Well, mixing up cream cheese is kind of a pain in the ass, but the KitchenAid just whipped right through it. And then we bought the spiralizer that had 6 or 7 different options to make the zoodles, slice it, and that kind of thing. As we got into more meal prep, that opened the door to cutting things in different shapes, the ability to cook it different ways and serve it different ways. We grow a lot of squash and zucchini around here, and the ability to change that up and not be the same old stagnant thing that we do all the time. And look, man, that was like, I bought the Pro model with the attachments. I think I spent maybe $300 brand new. It's also a beast. I just take it once the service is done, I put it in the sink and I just hose it off. I mean, it's awesome. Those are 3 things that I would have people look at initially, no matter what they're doing, just because they're so versatile.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the KitchenAid. It's something I've never thought of. I know my mom had one back in the day, but that just goes to show you the personal, like, you've got your things that you love. Doesn't mean that you need that for your own commercial kitchen. Like if I had a top 3, it would be the Vitamix, it'd be a commercial rice cooker, and it would be a food processor. I think all of those 3 things for me just come in handy all the time.
The food processor, I really had a hard time making that my number 3 or number 4 pick. Mm-hmm. And your food processor is awesome compared to mine. Sucks. Like I liked mine, and then I used yours, and like, well, shit, I got to get a food processor. But yeah, I mean, we all do different things. I think if I had to say, or what could I not live without, it's the knife that I use for everything. So I have my favorite knife. It's high carbon. It sharpens up really nice, and I just make sure to keep my stuff very sharp all the time. If you use the same knife over and over again, a cutting board that you like, you're going to reduce your accidents. It's going to cut everything the way you want it to do. And the knife for me, I think is my new number 1 pick, and then everything else, because that's the thing I use the most. And it's just such an extension of who I am as a cook now that I didn't even think about including that as number 1. And there's all kinds of small tools that you can get that you'll need, maybe zesters and of course peelers for sure for carrots and that kind of thing. But
a mandolin is a good one.
So moving away from equipment, you will have some utility considerations. I mean, you're going to have to drain the water somewhere. If you're out on a farm, maybe you can reclaim that water like I did. Our kitchen is uphill from our high tunnel, and we actually have that going through a leach line right to the high tunnel just to constantly keep things semi-moist, and you will have to run water lines to the kitchen. You'll have to run electricity to the kitchen. And electricity is one of those things that we were underpowered for what we did. We blew breakers, like Brandon said. And if you're using a Vitamix, a blender, and making something on a hot plate all at the same time, and you're going on one circuit, you're going to blow that thing. If people follow the Victory Gardens page, you've seen a couple of times I have had to cancel complete services because the breaker blew for the refrigerator, and we've lost hundreds of dollars because of the breakers. So make sure if you're building new, you have the option to oversize your electricity. And I don't do my own electricity, so I had an electrician do it. But even if you're going into an existing space, if you're going to spend any money, I would spend it on making sure you have the right electricity for the right equipment, and maybe some fudge room, because you may go from a Ninja blender to a Vitamix, and it's going to suck up more over the years.
Like, you got to consider, what are the things that can cost you the most? Like you just said, if your breaker trips because you didn't size your electric properly, you can lose hundreds of dollars in food. And now you might let it happen again. And it's like, you still have to go back and repair it. You have to bring someone out. And so it'll end up costing you more anyway. And so there's definitely things that maybe you can get away with. Like, you had mentioned you want to buy refrigeration brand new. I actually ended up not really doing that because I was very patient, took my time, and was willing to travel very far for what I thought was a good opportunity. It saved several $1,000s, but I wouldn't dare to consider that when it comes to like gas lines or water lines or anything like that can just shut you down.
And the last thing I'll say about refrigeration is make sure that you consider, okay, here's my refrigerator that houses my base ingredients for whatever you're doing, whatever you decide your menu is going to be. But that you also, if you're doing a delivery or a pickup kind of thing, that you have enough refrigeration for the finished product as well. That's a bad place to be. Like if you build all this thing out and you make it, and then at the end of the day, you have all these containers that you need to refrigerate, but you don't have a place for it. Just know that you may have a refrigerator that sits empty 2 to 4 days a week in between service or in between delivery, and you're just going to have to be okay with it.
Let me tell you a lesson learned here that I had to deal with. When I first started, I only had the refrigerator in my food truck. There was a 3-day event going on, where there's 2 different events, all back to back to back for 3 days. And so I did all of my prep ahead of time. And so I had the fridge just packed. It was the 9-inch by 9-inch pans, but I just maybe had like 50, not 50, but just top to bottom, all those pans full of food. And the ones in the middle, they were not getting cold enough. And so for 12 or 24 hours, those things were not at temperature. And when the health department came to my trailer, as they do at every festival, they come and see and check on your stuff. We checked one of the middle pans, and it was at like 50 degrees. And this middle pan was like the thing I was most excited about, the thing I was most proud of, because that night we were at something called the Bacon and Brew, and it was like my bacon topping. And I had to freaking toss it. And I wasn't smart enough to know about needing proper air circulation in your refrigerator. So it's definitely something to keep in mind.
Well, and my air circulation story is, I remember one of the first couple of weeks we actually were in production that we used the full refrigerator. We had like enough orders to fill the whole thing. Well, we put the containers up to the wall and it was packed. And I didn't realize that circulation fan that kind of blows the cold air around in some of these units was blowing pretty much all night long right on 4 of the boxes. Well, when you get there in the morning, you pull them out and the boxes are black because that cold air has froze and bruised the salad mix. So the way we got around that was we just put a piece of cardboard over it. It deflected the air. And that was our very simple, very cheap. We used the same piece of cardboard forever. And that was like, we cut it out just right. And just used it from a box. But just knowing that air circulates and where that air is blowing could mess something up. And the last couple of little tips that we have is keep in mind where you're going to be going with this. If you're going to do a subscription thing, or if you're taking this to the farmer's market, remember you're going to have to hold temp, just like what Brandon went through at the festival. If you go to the farmer's market and that health inspector shows up and she sticks that thermometer in something, I can't imagine the embarrassment, like at 10 o'clock in the morning, whenever it's all packed, of having to pack your stuff up and leave, what that's going to do to the market. It's going to not make the market manager happy. I would think you would be hard pressed to to really gain back the trust of your people. Well, why is he leaving? Well, the health department people were here and they made him go home. That would just be devastating. So really think about, if I'm taking a refrigerator to the market, do they have proper breakers at the market? Ask, because I've blown breakers at the market, and it got to a point where I actually have my own key to the market breaker, so I don't have to bother the market manager, who sometimes isn't there. So I have a key that I share with another food truck that also goes. So just think about where you're taking this at the end.
One more thing about having a commercial kitchen is, especially on your farm, is it opens up the possibility for having events. And it's something that we've been talking a lot about here in Craven among us that we would like to do. But I'm pretty sure you did one as well, right?
We did a Sunday brunch, and we basically took all of the assets that we use for the farmers market. Like we've got these big blue rolling ice tubs that I bought for $25 from a convenience store. So it was like a beer cooler, right? So we had a mimosa bar, and we gave the mimosas away since we didn't have to mess with the licenses or anything like that. But we had brunch, and as people got there, we were making small plates of fruit and like little snacky things as we were making their crepes. And so we're talking about steps away from the kitchen, and we set up the outdoor dining area where it was an extension overhang with shade cloth from our high tunnel. And I'm gonna put pictures up on this because it was pretty awesome. But it was outside, but it was a little protected, and they had the shade. And we just put our bistro tables up. We pre-sold that event with Eventbrite tickets, but you could pre-sell it a number of different ways. The one thing I would have done different on that is set up times. Hey, you have a slot from 9 to 10 or 10 to 11 or something like that, because some people came and they stayed a long time and people were having to wait. And finally, people figured it out. But because that kitchen was right there, and because we tailored the menu for 3 dishes and everybody ate the same thing, it's not like they could come and pick. It's like, this is the menu for the brunch. This is the ticket. They knew what they were going to get, and there was kind of something for everybody, and it really worked out. I mean, there's endless possibilities on stuff like that.
And just, a little side note, you kind of mentioned it. If you need covering, if you try to have events at your farm and you need a simple, quick, efficient covering, a high tunnel with shade cloth might be pretty effective and cheap. So just want to throw that out there.
No, I did. I mean, honestly, I spent way too much on the side panel curtains, but it was just, once I kind of got started, I kind of got sucked into it. But it's awesome, and I still have it. In fact, I moved that into bar area now, and it looks, it still works. So I might have pictures of that, and it was super easy to make, and it's pretty cool. But another door gets opened up if you have that commercial kitchen. The other thing that we failed to mention is if you're in a city or urban environment, a lot of towns and cities have rental kitchens that you can rent by the hour or by the day or whatever. And that's what like a lot of caterers use. They'll come in and they've got a time slot, they get out. And a lot of that stuff has everything that you would ever need. And that's just part of the deal. I've personally never done it. I know people that do it, but I don't have enough to speak on it. But just know that there is the option sometimes to be able to rent a kitchen. Well, everybody, like I said, if you have any questions, please send them out, nick@bootstrapfarmer.com, and that will give me stuff to add to the incubator as we go along, and it'll just get better and better for everybody. If you have a tip, if you have a commercial kitchen and have a counterpoint or want to add to it, we are all for it. So that's nick@bootstrapfarmer.com. The beginning and ending music was provided by Random Rab, and this podcast was brought to you by Bootstrap Farmer. Everybody have a great week, and we will see you on Thursday, where Brandon is going to ask me questions about starting a lunch club. Everybody have a good day. Thank you.
Hey, this is Brandon Youst. I'm the founder of Bootstrap Farmer, and I just want to thank you for listening to this podcast. We're doing this podcast for you because we feel it's important to get a lot of information out there, so I hope you're enjoying it. And if you are, I would love to have you leave a review on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. It's what helps us get the word out to even more farmers out there. If you don't like what you're hearing, reach out to us. We would very much appreciate feedback. I'm just going to leave it there and enjoy.